Welcome back, everybody, to this episode of the Open Concept Podcast, where we are breaking down unnecessary walls and barriers that stand in the way of greatness. Our guest today, Manja Horner, joining us from just outside of Toronto, CEO and founder of Boost Development. Manja, it's so great to have you here. Really appreciate that. Boost Development, you've been working with construction companies, trades, home service businesses, helping them really develop their skill set, their leadership, working through HR issues, and really dialing in, I think, what it means to be a great leader in the industry, specifically in the trades and home service-based businesses. It's awesome to have you here on the show today. Very grateful for your time. For everybody that doesn't know who you are, would love to hear a little bit about you and your background, if you wouldn't mind sharing that with us before we get into the show.
Cool. Thanks, Brandon, for having me. I always love being a guest on shows like this because it's kind of open forum and we don't have to talk all business. We get to mix in family and life and all the things that make us tick. So I love that about your show. My name, again, is Manja Horner. And like you said, I have a business called Boost. We do HR and skills development training for skilled trades companies. And I mean, that's definitely not, I think, the most interesting thing about me, but it is what's making me tick and kind of running my world right now, leading me to just take bigger risks and get outside my comfort zone. So I guess it's a pretty big part of who I am at the moment. But the rest of it is I've got 3 kids that are growing, 13, 11, and 6. And I feel like every other minute I'm just worried about stuff that pertains to them. You know, like how's school? Are they in the right program? Too many extracurriculars, too much screen time. How are we doing?
All that
and that is just driving all the things. Of course, just trying to, live a good life in a kind of a crazy world. So
it's funny. I have a 4-year-old daughter, and now at the time that we're recording, a 5-month-year-old daughter. And the biggest conversation around, other than sleep for our 5-month-year-old daughter, because she's just not sleeping,
yep.
is our daughter's going to be going into kindergarten next year. And so there's a lot of talk around the house about, hey, which school is our daughter going to go into? Because, that's going to define who she is as a person for the rest of her life. Kindergarten's a pretty big deal. So that seems to be a funny topic of conversation around the house. But all that stuff that you talk about, right? The screen time, how much is okay? Is it okay if it's used as a tool? Is it, are we being bad parents if we're letting our kids watch TV? Well, the neighbors across the street, they don't let their kids watch TV at all. So should we be doing that? All those things, I think, as parents, certainly I've learned bounce around in your mind, and you question whether or not you're doing the right thing, and you wonder how those kids are gonna grow up and what they're gonna want to do, and where they're gonna end up, and are they gonna survive this crazy world that we're living?
Well, yeah, and I don't want to think that we're so special as a generation, but I do think things are moving at such a rate that no previous generation had to deal with the kind of rate of change that we're dealing with and we're parenting through. And the education system is so strange. I never quite know what is right. But you're right. It does make a big difference what kind of school your kids are in. And because I'm a teacher, ultimately an educator, one of my professional degrees is a teaching degree. So I've been in the school system for 5 minutes and was like, yeah, I don't know if I want my kids in this. So we've always really tried to have our kids in other alternative programming, like from Montessori all the way up to private education. We've even hired a homeschool teacher. We've homeschooled. And then this fall for the first time in our kids' lives are in public school. And I have a lot of feelings about it, but my girls are actually really enjoying it. They're in middle school and they think it's a hoot because they said it's really easy in their sports and clubs. And so they're having fun, which I'm glad for them. It's just another experience in their toolkit, right?
Yeah, you mentioned a couple of things like the time that we're living in right now is a really, really unique time where I remember time before the internet, and we saw the internet come in. And I remember as a kid, I think we were, I was around 9 or 10, and we had a computer at the house, but it was one computer for the
Yeah.
family, big honking thing. I was using Microsoft DOS, right? It was
Yep.
like you plug in, you kind of learn how to code so you can open up the computer a little bit. And that was a really wild time because there was very little that you could do with the computer. But then to see the internet come, and now with AI, like things are moving so quickly that in our generation, we remember a time where we didn't have to deal with all that. It wasn't a thing. Sure, there were other pressures, and there was certainly, we had MTV, and we had all this stuff that was happening, and maybe shaped our culture and our generation a
Mhm.
little bit, but certainly not at the rate of change and the rate of speed that we're seeing just the world have on us today that could potentially impact our children. And uh, it's stuff that definitely crosses my mind all the time.
Yeah, and I think we can kind of hedge our bets against it a little bit. And my philosophy and the thing that my husband and I are really focused on doing is teaching our kids real skills. Um, Actually how to survive, how to use, well, my son is 6 and he carries a pocket knife, and that's not typical. We were at a barbecue this summer, and there were some people who literally were like, "Oh, does everyone know this kid has a knife?" And I'm like, yeah, like he's supposed to have a knife. Like it's his knife, and he can, carve and whittle, and, like there's a lot of boundaries and rules around the knife, but we've never had to say it more than once. Like I literally said to him when I gave him the knife, this is a huge responsibility. There are no mistakes with this knife. Like, just so you know, there's no, oops, I forgot, because the knife will be mine for at least another year.
Yeah, there's
So
not a
like,
lot of three strikes with
no,
a sharp
I
blade.
said to him, there's no strikes. You're out with this. But yeah, like my personal philosophy is we've got to teach the kids to do stuff very much off screen, because on the screen, they're just living vicariously through other people. And they're just there strictly for entertainment, inspiration, a wee bit of education. But I'm more about skill development than anything. So, this weaves into work and business as well. But like myself and the kids, we all practice music. Everybody has to spend time on their instruments. You're outside doing something, or you're creating something in the house. Like there's definitely limits. You're baking, or you're cooking, or you're tidying or cleaning, or just whatever needs to be done so that the kids stay a little bit grounded in reality, and it's not all watching random dudes build Lego Minecraft
Yeah.
on YouTube, because that kind of stuff drives me insane.
Well, we're talking about schooling here earlier, and leadership, and I think you are always homeschooling your children anytime that
Always.
they're at school, right? Even if they're in public school, private
Yeah.
school, or at the Montessori, wherever they may be. But when they are at home, they are being homeschooled, and they're mimicking the way that you speak to them. They're mimicking the movements that you're making, maybe how you're putting the dishes away. All these little things they are really going to pick up on. And same thing as a leader in an organization, right? Your staff, your team members are going to some degree, especially early on, when you're growing your business, they are going to be guided by the decisions that you make as the leader of the organization, because they are looking to North Star principles and general habits that they can continue to mimic, because they understand that if this is what you are doing or how you are operating, then that is the standard or the expectation that you have. So then they will follow in those footsteps. Health and fitness has always been a huge part of my life.
Okay. Yep.
And it wasn't up until probably 2 years ago where I started monitoring my food quite
Hmm.
seriously and watching my macronutrients and, seeing what that looks like. But, I start bringing my lunch to work and start eating healthy. And these are the kind of habits that I display in front of the staff. So that when somebody brings a burger through the door or fast food, that they kind of walk in and they don't really feel great about it. They know that there's a
Mm.
sense of judgment, even though I'm not judging them, but
Yep.
they kind of feel like maybe
They're
I
a little
should have
sheepish about
prepared
it.
my lunch, and yeah, certainly be a little sheepish about it. But same thing at home, right? You're always going to be a leader and a teacher, whether you know it or not, whether you want to or not. You are going to be a teacher for your children, just like as a leader, you are going to be a leader for your staff.
Yeah, I love it. I use a lot of parenting analogies with our clients because a huge part of the work we do is business transformation. And that's just a fancy word for when people in their companies are having challenges and they want to grow, or things are like shit's really hit the fan. Usually they call us because it's generally a people problem or a leadership problem or a culture problem. And we fix that in a variety of ways. But at the heart of it is helping leaders be better, and a lot of our clients, they're skilled trades company owners. They probably came off the tools or out of the field and then started their own company, or maybe they bought a company or they got promoted into a leadership position. So there's not a lot of, school that they went to for how to be a great leader or professional management skills. Like that's not really how they were trained to get into that job. So I love it because I think we're a little bit of a lifeline and a bit of a backfill from a professional development perspective. But one of the biggest things that we talk about is building a great company culture, because every business has a culture. It's just like families. I mean, families have a culture, and it will happen if you're not intentional about it. So no matter what, you're going to have a culture. Some people have one and they're like, shoot, this is awful and I don't know what to do to fix it because I don't like it. And others are really intentional about crafting that.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, it's so fun to make a culture, to define what that would look like for a family or for a business. It's like it starts with a vision. How do we want to be? What do we want to see for ourselves? It comes down to some values. What are our core values, and how are we going to live our lives, and how are we going to hold ourselves and each other accountable? How are we going to spend our money, for goodness sakes? Like all of that relates to family and business. And then, how are we going to live, and what are our strategies going to be? And I don't know, there's a lot of parallels. So we do use a lot of parenting parallels in our leadership discussions, because I think it's very relatable. It doesn't really matter. Even if you don't have your own kids, you've been parented by somebody and it was either good or bad, and you can learn lessons from that. So
Yeah, and the school system, they don't really teach, especially
no,
at an early age. They don't really teach the skills that you're talking about as
no, they
far as
definitely don't.
leadership
Not
and
even in high school. I mean,
communication.
unless you're somewhere amazing.
Well, it's not my experience, that's for sure. I barely graduated high school. I've told
Yeah.
my story a number of times,
Yeah.
but that was the reality of it. And I got into construction pretty early on out of high school because I didn't have a lot of, I shouldn't say that I didn't have a lot of other choice, but
Mhm.
when the option was presented to me, it seemed like the most viable option. And I didn't really know what I was getting myself into. I like the idea of working with my hands, of developing new skills that I didn't have. I like the fact that they were going to pay me more than,
Yeah.
a lot of organizations were at the time. But it wasn't until I got involved in construction that I started building a sense of confidence.
Mm.
When I was younger, I did find myself having quite a bit of confidence, but it was in those really informative years, the age of 15, 16, 17, where I started losing some of that confidence.
Oh, yeah.
And that was primarily based around my situation with the school system. But when I found the trades and home service based businesses, it really and my career in construction started. The people that I was with, it really, and the opportunities that they provided me throughout those early days really did build a lot of confidence that the school wasn't able to provide.
Yeah.
And I found that the school system was very much, telling me that there was a problem with me, and here was the issue, and here's the pills to fix that, and
Mhm.
we're going to give you more time because we're going to treat you like this person that can't learn, versus getting to the root problem of it.
Yeah.
And that was a lot to overcome, and it wasn't, really didn't start learning what I needed to learn until after I was out of school and sought out those coaches myself and the courses that I wanted to take and the things that interested me. The idea of investing myself was, or in myself, was never really something that I had considered until it was kind of do or die. Like, you're
Mhm.
on your own. You have to learn these skills. So if nobody's going to invest into you or invest for you, then you have to learn to do that yourself.
Well, and I love that you got into trades and found trades. And um, Brandon, I don't know if I mentioned this, but I'm writing a book. Actually, the day today that we're recording, my draft goes to the editor. So it's coming
Amazing.
out. Thank you. It's coming out in March, and it's called Passing the Torch in the Trades. So it is a book focused on the trades and, passing information from one generation to the other. Because in North America right now, we've got what, a third of the workforce is retiring in the next 5 years. That's a
Mm,
huge, huge chunk of people leaving. And we as a culture or as a country, society are really starting to focus on attracting young people into the trades again. And I spent 2 chapters in the book going back into the archives in 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s and looked at what happened. Like, how did we get here where we've got this inverted bell curve of people in the trades? Like, we've got loads of people retiring, a whole bunch of people in the middle. There's just not that many people in that middle segment, and then a lot kind of trying to get into the trades again. How did we get there? And it boiled down to the trades just didn't remain a priority in the 80s and 90s. The politicians, they were trying to promote a knowledge economy. They were trying to promote knowledge workers and really run after that tech boom. The blue chip, the dot
yeah.
com bubble, all of that. And so anybody who had a decent mark in school was funneled straight into colleges and universities. And they actually were giving colleges and universities money for professors, for programs, for buildings, and then they were offering a lot of cash to students, late 90s, early 2000s kids, in form of scholarships and grants and tons of student loans. And they were actively dissuading people from going into the trades. So unless you were a total like hazard to the college or university program, that's the only opportunity you had. And they even cut the high school shop classes and automotive. Like, those programs started losing funding. I think it was what, Comtech, it was like the CTE classes. Anyways, it was a legitimate issue, and we're seeing now the repercussions of it with loads of Gen X and millennials who are, now about to be displaced by AI, which is also an ironic situation.
A huge topic that comes up on this
Yeah,
podcast a lot.
yeah,
The one of the things I remember hearing from my teachers in school was, hey, you got to get good grades because you got to go to college or university, because otherwise you're going to end up as a plumber. And who
yeah.
wants to do
It's
that?
like, I hope I end up as a plumber. I mean, now I'm this like multiple university degree educated woman, and I'm like, about to buy blue collar companies, and
Yeah.
I have a service business that helps skilled trades. I'm just like, oh man, we did it wrong. Or maybe not. I mean, nobody did it wrong. I think every path leads you somewhere on purpose, but there was a huge market manipulation of students through education and through messaging. And it's wild. I mean, the effect it's had.
Well, I think that there was a big push for a lot of the schools there because they saw an opportunity, right? You mentioned the blue
Yeah.
chip, the dot-com boom, and at that time there seemed to be a huge opportunity when the internet was rolling around, and our computer classes were getting a few new computers, and things were kind of getting upgraded, and there was all this talk about what this could look like. And so there was this painted version of what the future was going to look like, and the huge, vast amount of opportunity that was sitting in front of us to tackle that. And I think a lot of people chose to go in that direction because they were guided that way because of the opportunity that the world told them that they had in front of them. And I don't think anybody, or very, very few people, expected that AI was going to come around and we'd be in the
I don't
position
think
that we
people
that we are
expected it.
right now.
No,
But
no.
back to your point about trades, I mentioned to you offline. I'm going to this week to go to a career day, and one of the big things that I am pushing for all the high schools, and I'm doing a lot of talking around different schools and campuses at the moment, is trying to really get people to engage with the idea of trades becoming their first choice, and the reasons behind that. Especially because it's done such wonderful things for myself and so many people that I know. Um, but there still is a bit of a shift, and I'm finding more and more now that people are listening, and
Mhm.
they are understanding. Okay, like becoming a plumber, becoming an electrician, becoming a carpenter, whatever that is, getting a trade, being able to work with your hands is an awesome path forward, and it can provide you with so much opportunity.
There's definitely interest, and what we have to do as an industry, so if you're involved in skilled trades, is create a more hospitable workplace. So that's big because when you look at students coming out now, I mean, we're looking at Gen Z and even the next generation younger. What are they called? Alpha? I don't even know.
I'm
I lose
lost.
track.
Yeah.
But these people, these kids, I'll say, I feel bad saying that, but any under 30s, um, and even younger entering the workforce, they don't have the same expectations that Gen X's were okay with. I mean, when you think about it, Gen X's grew up like going down hot metal slides in the summer and just were like, oh, yeah, that stung. Like it was
Oh
just
yeah.
a different level of suck it upness that doesn't exist with young people. And I'm not saying that young people have to toughen up. That's not what I'm saying. In fact, we need to create better workplaces that aren't bullyish. They're not putting people down. They're not yelling at people because there's a lot of leaders in the skilled trades who still operate like, well, I got yelled at and now I get to yell at people. Like that actually exists in the trades. And I think as a whole, we've got to make better workplace culture, better onboarding and training. I mean, you can't expect young people to buy all their own gear and tools and equipment. That doesn't exist if you go work a corporate job. If you go work a corporate job, they hand you your computer, they hand you your camera. They don't buy your clothes for you, but we've got to set things up more hospitably for young people so that when they get into the trade, they're not expected to push a wheelbarrow or a broom for 6 years learning through osmosis because no kid wants that. They actually want to know that there's a path forward in the company. They want to know there's a career ladder for them to advance, and they actually don't have the patience to wait like previous generations did. And maybe that's not a bad thing. In fact, we need more people skilled to a higher level. So we just have to get better at training them right from the start.
I think
Yeah,
patience is
there's
a,
a
is a,
there's a
is an
lot of stuff going on.
I 100% agree, and I think patience is an interesting thing, but I've seen a lot of that too, and I think that's because there's when when I was first hired on, I did push that broom. I
I
was
know.
that guy. I was working when I started my apprenticeship. I think the second year of my apprenticeship, I was paired up with a journeyman, and we worked side by side. And he did not want me there. He did not care for me. He did not want to teach me, but it was required that I work with him. And we went an entire month without even talking to each other. And
Crazy.
the only couple of words that he would speak to me were when I would mess something up.
Probably negative. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was like, why are you doing that? I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't know what, like, we just tell me what I need to do. I'm here. I'm willing to
Well,
learn.
and
Like,
you
I'm
want
showing
to
up
be
every
there.
single day. Of course. Yeah. No,
Well,
I definitely
and
want to be
to
there.
contrast that, like I learned my skilled trade from my dad. So he had he called it a general contracting business, but actually it was a specialty for historic restoration.
Yeah.
So his projects were all heritage designated buildings. And so I remember one project, and he had a crew of about 25 at that time. We were working on this huge mansion that was historically significant and it had been damaged by fire. So, long story short, myself, my two sisters, and two of our other girlfriends, we were all in high school, and he had us all hired as like an all girl crew. And we had two guys that were our supervisors. One was this older guy named Bronco, literally from Croatia. His English was atrocious, but he was awesome. We literally had to learn through osmosis with him because he couldn't explain anything in English. So we had to really interpret. But he was super nice, very generous with his time. And we didn't push brooms for years. We actually got to do really cool plaster repair. We stripped all the wood. I'm pointing behind me, but like old historic wood components that had to all be stripped down. We worked in the shop. We learned how to turn wood on a lathe and made like components. We got to do really cool stuff because we just happened to be a pretty artistic group of young people. I think my dad knew our capabilities, so he kind of pushed us and stretched us. And I got to do really cool shit as a teenager in the skilled trades. And like, that's the beauty of learning alongside somebody who's not holding his cards to his chest, who's not like, I don't want to nurture these young people, but actually somebody who wants to pass on his skill. And I hold that time. I mean, it sucked. I worked for a few summers with a Tyvek suit stripping paint. Like it wasn't pleasant. And, you literally sand your fingerprints off, getting that wood back to its former state. But yeah, invaluable. And here I am, 20 years later talking about it and teaching about it and making a living off of that.
I remember one of the jobs that I did, I was working the night shift. We were doing a big addition at the airport, one of the airports here in Vancouver. And we had to work at night because we had to shut things down. And I think it was 2 months straight, I was in a big hazmat suit and I was just scraping spray insulation off of
Yep.
steel columns and beams with a respirator on. And that was it for
That
8
was your
hours
day.
in the
Yep.
dark. And it was at night. And then I'd go home and I would sleep, and it was over the summer and the school was out, and we lived near an elementary school, and kids are running around and it's the middle of the day. Like you just don't have that kind of sleep, but you do learn you kind of learn that you just have to show up and it's your job to do that. And you take that, you understand the task at hand, and you're not arguing about it. It kind of sucks, but you do that. And now, like you said, we can talk about those times, and it feels good to have gone through some of that to be able to speak about it.
Yeah.
In
Now, to
fact,
be fair, you always needed a little bit of a glimmer of hope to know that project had an end date. You can look and see,
yeah,
all right, I only have 300 more columns to scrape and then I'm done. But what it does too is it gets you motivated to be more productive and find ways of getting the job done faster and find those shortcuts, like the good shortcuts. Like this is actually what can turn into your company's trade secrets. Like
do you think patience there, or the lack of patience, is because everything is just so available right
yeah,
now, and the idea is like, even if our Wi-Fi is lagging, like we
yeah.
can, if we're taking an Uber and the Wi-Fi in the Uber sucks, like it's detrimental because we can't communicate properly, and we just have that expectation that things are going to arrive at our fingertips.
Yeah, I think we're in such an instant gratification society that it is a bit to our detriment, and young people as well. Um, I think this is one of the areas where we do have to be intentional as parents, is letting our kids have some boredom, limit the screen time so they're not, and I'm by no means perfect on this, good Lord. Like, I'm constantly judging myself for this when my 6-year-old is watching more screen time than he should or whatever. But we need more time to just be unplugged and let our brains wander and experience that boredom. I was on a train the other day. I was commuting from Toronto, which I never do. And it's about an hour train ride. And my phone was almost dead. And I thought, I'm not going to use my phone because if the ticket guy comes around, I have to be able to pull up my ticket and show it. And it was on death's door. So I sat there just looking at people for an hour on the train. I had no book. My laptop wasn't connecting to anything. And I thought, you'll be fine.
You should
You'll be
spend some
fine.
time in that
Just
brain of
sit
mine, and
here
hopefully I don't get
and
scared away.
exactly. Hopefully I don't get scared. Yeah. And it's good. Sometimes it's good to put yourself through those kind of quiet, meditative, bored states, and the kids hate it, but it's good for them. I don't know.
As we look at these next stages of passing that torch, what do you think is going to transfer really well, but what do you think is going to get lost, or in the transfer of, maybe it's really dialing in the skill set itself, maybe it's a work ethic thing, maybe it's could be anything, but what do you think are some of the nuances that are going to get missed or not going to get transferred the way that they should from the generation ahead of us that is
Mhm.
retiring to the next generation, so that they can learn properly? Is there anything there that you think
Yeah.
may, like, that diamond in the rough kind of bit of information that is going to get lost in that transfer of information?
Yeah. I think there are some things. There are some really good things that are going to get lost for sure. And then there are some things that they do that I think it'll be okay to lose. So a couple of things. One is definitely work ethic. You're not getting the same volume of people who are willing to work for 12-hour shifts, 5, 6 days a week. You're not seeing young people want to do overtime. You're not even seeing young people who want to work 5 days a week. Like, they truly, for them, work is maybe third priority in their life. It is not number one. And for boomers, it was definitely number one. They were willing to put in a lot of hours. And now you're seeing people who don't want to trade their time for their money. So
Yeah.
that's tricky. They're trying to find value in different ways, and I don't blame them. So, yeah, there's some element of work-life balance, I'll say, or just prioritizing life more than work. That is not going to transfer to the next generation. I think we can try, but I don't think they don't want that.
I'm gonna pause you there for a sec, because I've noticed that, and I do want to come back to that thought. But I have certainly noticed that when I was younger, the idea of owning a home specifically was something that was attainable. If I worked enough, if I saved enough, I could come up with a down payment. I had a path forward. And so for me, I knew that if I was working all of those hours, what I was working for. And you mentioned
Mm.
that that light forward in, whatever it was that you were working on, the 300 columns, you were almost done. But it was those sacrificing the weekends, the long days, working all of the overtime as much as possible, trying to make as much money, because I knew that I wanted to buy a house. And I think that with housing prices the way that they are, certainly in the Vancouver area and definitely in the Toronto area where you are as well, there's a little bit of that is become almost unattainable in the minds of so many of these kids. So they said, okay, well, if we don't have this thing to work for, then what are we going to work for? We're going to work for our weekends. We're going to work for time with our family. We're going to work for time with our friends. And you can't trade that time for money and make a significant increase in your savings and have all of the same kind of experiences that you are hoping for, without some real strategy. And that becomes a difficult thing. So when you're talking about why don't people want to work 12 hours a day? Why don't they, or I shouldn't say all people, but why do a
A
lot
lot of
of
people, like
people,
not en masse like they used to be willing to work.
100%, but I think that they feel that they have less to work towards, and they
Mm,
don't know what it is that they're working towards because they can't paint that for themselves. Because that the idea of a owning a home, having a family, was something that was in a lot of people's minds, and that's what you were working for. And now, if that the idea of that has just been too costly, or you have opinions of what the future is going to look like, uncertainty with AI, or you're caught up considering climate change or global warming, and you think that there's not going to be a world here for your family to have, or be here in this world, then all of a sudden you're like, okay, well, I'm going to do this now just for me, and I'm going to enjoy my time here. And I've started to notice certainly a bit of that mind shift, and it's trying to find certainly that balance. It has been challenging.
yeah, I think, I was actually just at Ontario's Home Builders Association a couple of days ago, and there was some pretty dismal data coming out on home ownership and real estate. And there's a huge shift now towards rentals, so actual purpose built rentals, young people actually wanting that again. And actually, the number of rentals, and I hope I get my data right here, the number of rental properties being purpose built right now, the number of units matches and almost surpasses in the 70s when we saw all the apartments built in the last wave. So it's
Mhm.
making this like big comeback again. And I mean, everything goes in 50-year cycles pretty much, right? But yeah, I think young people, this message that's coming down kind of from the global elite, like you will own nothing and be happy about it, it's materializing. um and young people aren't sure if they're going to be able to buy a house, and it's kind of sad.
We're seeing a lot of purpose-built rentals here too, and a lot of developers that have purchased land, and especially over COVID, when they were picking up properties, and with the idea of, okay, we're going to go and build these towers, and finally, it's taken 3-4 years to get through permitting, to organize pre-sales, to come up with designs that are going to be feasible for the community that they're building in, or the city. And now they're looking to build, and it's just so expensive that they're having to go back to those people that they had pre-sold these units to, and say, hey, actually, this unit isn't going to be 600 grand, it's actually going to be 900, so we need another $300,000. And people are saying, actually, we don't have that, we can't get finance for that, so they're backing out, giving up their deposits. And now developers aren't getting finance to build, and they're looking at the market saying people are not going to buy these units.
Hmm.
And that's where they're pivoting now to more purpose-built rentals and big programs like, through CMHC. They're offering
That's
95%
right. A
financing
lot of
for the
financing
construction
through
costs.
CMHC. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's right.
to build these units. And so now you have, but you still, the pro forma as the developer, it needs to work. You need to know that you're going to have occupancy. You need to have commitments from people that do want to rent this out if you are going to take the risk to build, because
Hmm.
building's expensive as well. But you're right. I
Yeah, it's
think
so interesting. Yeah, so I mean, we're seeing a swing in terms of lifestyle and expectations of young people. Um, and I think that's going to really dictate, you know, how long and how much people want to work. It's just not the same. So going back to your initial question that led us here, for sure, we're not seeing the same work ethic passing down. It's just not what that generation wants to do. And there's something to learn in there as well. Maybe we don't work 60 hours a week and, live for a couple hours on a weekend. I don't know. I know I certainly don't.
yeah.
I was never interested in working massive amounts of hours. I've always created a career journey for myself where I could have more creative time, work based on my energy, and develop something. Um, yeah, so I'm not one to throw any shade. I don't like working a lot.
But I do think the landscape of owning a business or working at a business is changing, and
Mhm.
as the business owner, or if you're part of a leadership team, and the expectation is that you are going to only hire people that are going to come in and sacrifice the work those 12 hours a day, put in the weekends, you're probably not going to find as many of those people. And I do know a lot of companies that like live, breathe, die. That's the only type of person that they are going to hire, and that is the culture that they are building. But I think that that is fewer and further between than what is normal now. So if you are a business owner and you talked a lot about culture and shaping culture early on in our conversation, but how do you, as the business owner, if you still need people to produce what they need to produce, to run the company, to keep somebody employed, how do you go about shaping those expectations and that culture, and having those people that you do want to hire, but maybe they don't have that same kind of work ethic that you're hoping for, come in and still thrive within an organization that you're building as a part of that
Yeah.
culture?
Well, I don't have all the answers, but I'm happy to brainstorm here because I love doing that. And what comes to mind is there a way that we can do more part-time or like overlap or shift work? Can we have, some industries they'll do job sharing. So you might have two people who do the same job and are working on the same project, but they only each work 6 hours. Or somebody works Monday to Thursday and somebody works Tuesday to Friday and they have some overlap. I don't know. I think there's ways that we could maybe make some small teams, have them work, have people off when they need to. People want time to be able to take their kids to school, or somebody's got to pick up. People don't want their kids in daycare before and after school. I think there's a shift happening around the family unit as well, where I'm seeing young people want to have a stay-at-home person. They know that daycare is really expensive, and they know that good schooling is really expensive, and they look at how much one of the partners is making and go, it's not worth it. Why am I working, paying 3/4 of my paycheck to somebody else to raise my kids? So there are a lot of shifts. And I think if we want to create a culture of work or a workplace where we can find and retain people, we've got to get creative, and we've got to look at other industries and think outside the box. If we want to have, a happy workforce, I do think we have to think of it differently. I don't know. Like, that's not going to be popular among construction guys. I'm going to get a lot of, that's not possible. And I've talked about it with people, and I'm like, well, is it? Can you get just as much productivity out of somebody in 6 hours as you can 8 or 9? I would argue you can.
I
There
think
is
it's
a
possible.
lot of pacing happening. I'll just say it as a nice way of saying it. Oh, here's an example. I have somebody who works for me. She left a really good union job to come work for me. And she took a slight pay cut, but not really. More just the perks of benefits and things, because I don't offer that the same as the union does with the pension. But she wanted to be able to drop her kid off and pick him up. And so she works 6 hours a day, and she's paid for 6 hours a day. And I have to force her to get up off her desk. She's still working like probably harder, knowing she only has 6 hours to get shit done. And then she's out of here by 3 to pick up her kid. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
I think it's setting the expectation of the results that you're looking for.
Hmm.
And if you are able to measure the results that you're looking for, and you are hitting those goals or surpassing them,
Yeah.
and you have, as a leader, painted a vision big enough that you know that their vision can sit in and fit in your vision that you can offer,
Yeah.
then they will work. But it's also the requirement of the leader of the company, or the somebody on the leadership team, whoever is owning that, to make sure that things are running efficiently,
Yeah.
that
Like,
there's
what
not a
if,
lot of lost time.
yeah, like, what if you said, all right, as a core team, this is what we have to get done by Thursday. And here's the reason why, because people want to be connected to a why. They need to know the reason. So let's just say it's like, all right, if we can get this done by Thursday at 4 p.m., we're all getting Friday off. If we haven't hit that, we're back in on Friday. Like, tell me the team's not going to hustle for that Friday off.
Almost every time.
Almost every time. And it's not that they're not, and maybe if they're in a salaried position, they're not losing hours. That's the other thing, is when we're an hourly rate um, organization, you lose the ability to give that flex. I struggle with that a little bit within my team, because half of my team is employees and the other half are subcontractors. And we're always trying to find ways of gaining leverage, right? So it's like, okay, this first project, it takes you 40 hours to do. The next time it might take us 25 hours to do. So we're always looking for where can we find leverage within the team. But it does disproportionately affect the hourly people, because they aren't then getting compensated for that time. We have to just put them on something new. So they never quite get to experience the benefit of that leverage. So we might want to rethink how we're paying people. If it is a salary and we're very clear on daily, weekly outputs that are required for the job, you could shrink the timeline and say, you know what, if you weren't pushing that broom at like 3 snail's paces an hour, we might actually get out of here a day early. And then everyone, hustles a bit harder. So I don't know. I think if you are very clear about the role, very clear about the responsibilities, very clear about the outcome that everybody's working towards as a team, very clear about the results you're expecting, and then you incentivize people properly, you can make it work.
I've heard you talk a lot about the importance of onboarding when you're hiring on new staff, and especially young new staff that are maybe just fresh out of trade school or coming into your organization at a young age, and they have an expectation that things are going to happen a certain way versus, like you said, hey, just show up, follow me, you'll just catch on with, without going through a proper onboarding process. And that can be that. I mean, that was how I learned. There was, first day it was, orientation, kind of a safety thing. Cool. Here's your tool belt. Follow this guy, do what he says. And that was that.
Mm-hmm.
But there wasn't really an understanding. I didn't know the company I was working for. I didn't understand why I was doing what I was doing. There wasn't any of that. There was no talk of it, but that has shifted a bit. And so can you talk to us about the importance of proper onboarding?
Yeah. So onboarding is really critical for retention. So when you're in this supply and demand situation and you've got fewer supply, greater demand for great workers, you want to hold on to as many people as you can that are good. So retention has become actually pretty critical. So one of the great triggers for retention is onboarding. I think there's a stat, 69% of people will leave within the first couple of years if their onboarding experience was poor.
Yeah, it's
Or is
probably
it the
even less
reverse?
than that.
24%. Anyways, I'm sorry. My numbers are not hitting right. I'd have to direct you to one of my Instagram posts for that one. But long story short, onboarding is really critical for retention. And so what that looks like is not only just the pre-boarding, so like all of your paperwork and here's what you need to be successful on the first day, but it's the first day, week, 30, 60, 90 days for sure. And that has to be pretty intentional. So it's everything from who's the company, what do they stand for, what are we about, who do we serve, what are our expectations, our values. It's actually like all of the stuff that sets the tone for the culture. Here's the norms. Here's like how we like to do things. We always eat our lunch together on a Friday or whatever it is. It's making sure a person has all the right equipment. They know where to go. Think about it. If it's your first day on a job, you're going to get home and you're going to tell somebody, your mom, your wife, husband, partner, whatever. They're going to say, "Well, how was your first day?" And if you're like, "Honestly, it was shit. I had no idea where to go. I felt so awkward." That's not a good first impression. And that really sets the tone for your employment for the rest of your tenure there. So you want them to be able to say, "It was amazing. Like, I'm so excited to work here. This was definitely the right decision for us or for me." So being intentional about that first month, 60, 90 days is good. Also, it's a really handy tool for recruiting great people, because if in the hiring process, you can say, "This is our onboarding process. these are our training pathways through the company. And you've got something that shows like shovel, digger, all the way up to, tradesperson to foreman to supervisor, whatever. If you can show that journey and be like, there's lots of room for growth here in this company. And then you go to the guy down the road, he might offer $1 more an hour, but like, who are you going to go work for? Right. So it's a powerful recruitment tool. It's really great for retaining people. And it gives you a consistent kind of program to run people through as a business owner.
I think you said it earlier, your culture is going to either shape itself, or you are one way or another, or you can be intentional about the culture that you want to shape. And I love bringing on new people, because anytime that we bring on somebody new, especially somebody in a senior level position, and onboarding them, the onboarding game gets stepped up huge, because you do want to make that awesome first impression, and you do want them to realize that they are stepping into an organization that does take professionalism seriously. They care about your career. They care about where it is that you are going. They care about their community, everything that they live for, stand for. And those first few days are insanely critical to set the tone for what the rest of the year and what their potential career with you and your organization is going to look like.
Totally. It's really important. It's like a car, if you're not driving it, it's already in gear, baby. Like, it's just going to go its own direction. So cultures like that, you do have to be very intentional about it. Training's an interesting one too. We're big on how can we get people to develop skill and get some sense of mastery without it taking 20 years. That's a tricky one, but the philosophy that I have, or the practice, is called deliberate practice. So it's actually going, okay, if you're X worker and, in the first year or first year, we want you to be able to do these certain procedures. Let's just say you're a mechanic. Okay. So it's like, all right, your first year, we want to make sure as a company, you can do these kind of jobs. They're each going to require certain skills. So we're going to break that down. We're going to practice it together. I'm going to show you, you're going to show me, and then we're going to get you trying it. Okay. So deliberate practice is the art of actually like narrowing down something into its small pieces of skill. So not just like, here, you got to like change the oil, but like there might be a skill involved of like, I've got to use a wrench, or I've got to figure out how to time this so that the oil doesn't dump all over my face. I don't know. I've never changed the oil, to be fair, but
you're not a mechanic. Is that what you're saying?
No, you got to break it down into the little skill set and teach those and practice those. And actually, if you do that, you're going to get somebody up to speed way faster than if you throw them into a whole bunch of variety. And just kind of let them run amok. And this like mass exposure is actually not as good. If you like dial in for short periods of time, you can develop skill really fast. And this comes from my music teaching background. I don't think I mentioned that yet on the podcast, but
no, we talked about it offline, but you're a violinist.
Yeah. So I'm a violinist, and I was a music teacher from the age of 16 to, I don't know, well into my 30s. Yeah. I was a bit of a weird kid. I didn't have a very typical education. I did a lot of homeschool. And my grade 7, 8 years, I basically went and got my teacher's certificate in violin because I was homeschooled. 7 and 8? Yeah, grade 7 and 8.
Wow.
So my grade 8 education was violin, and I got my dad's business set up on QuickBooks. So I helped him get his paper bookkeeping set up into digital bookkeeping, and I did a lot of data entry for his construction company for years, just at night.
This wasn't in grade 7 and 8, was
grade
it?
8. This was grade 8.
I was like 13. Early high school.
I was 13. Yeah.
Wow.
So by the time I was 15, 16, I was teaching violin at a music studio. So I was at a music school, and I had like students. Bless my mom. She drove me, because I didn't even have my license yet. She drove me to the studio to teach, and I had a lot of students. So I learned that you could help your students get better at things if you really help them focus on how to practice. So if they're just randomly playing songs, their progression is really painfully slow. And I see this with my own kids. So my daughter, she's 13, my oldest, and she's working on her piano exam. It's coming up in January. And there's some stuff like that she's got to work on. It's not quite there yet. And her teacher was like, well, maybe we should push it until the spring. And I was like, nope, we're doing January. So I kind of stay out of it with my kids when they practice kind of throughout the year. I don't really hover over them because I think it's just great for them to have fun and enjoy it and all the things. But we've got an exam now. We got a deadline. So my daughter knows, she's like, okay, Mom, you're going to put me through the program now. I'm like, yep, I'm going to help you practice over the next 8 weeks and you're going to dial it in. So I don't want to hear you playing a song from start to finish until like the week before your exam. So it's like I'm like, play it for me once. Cool. I circle the spots that are weak. And I'm like, all right, you're just going to work those bars. That's it. I don't want to hear the whole song. She hates it. We look at like, what are some little nuances that can help her just like fix it? Is it a rhythm issue? Is it a timing issue? Is it a like fingering issue? And because I'm an expert in this, I can like watch her and dial in and I can be like, oh, it's just the way that your finger's moving. Here, move your finger like this to get from this note to that note. You got to move your index finger from here to there. Oh, all of a sudden she can do that. And now she's unlocked a whole nother level in that song. And it's no different in the skilled trades. I mean, like picture somebody's just doing a process or a procedure and they're just like 5 parts of it are fumbled. If you as the coach or the trainer can watch and go, okay, this thing, the way that you're holding that saw is awkward. Try it this way. You've just unlocked a whole level for them. And like their ability is just going to skyrocket now. So deliberate practice is a really cool concept. And if we can employ that much more intentionally in the skilled trades, we're going to see that mastery go from like, oh, it takes me 15 years down to maybe 5. I think we can cut things down a lot quicker.
Yeah, we refer to them as competency models, and they are, right? So if you are a site super, for instance, and you're coming on board, you get an understanding of here's the role, here's the description of the role, here's the full playbook of what it means to be a site super. But in amongst that playbook, here's the dozen or 15, 16 key components that defines that once those are completed, then you are actually, we consider you as being a site super. So if we have that, in the instance of the mechanic, it's not saying, okay, here, welcome to the job, go fix his car. As you know, on your first day of work, it's, hey, here's where we want to get to over the course of the next 4 years. You are going to have all of the abilities to do this. But before you graduate to here, first of all, this is where we keep the wrenches in order. This is how you stack them. Why? So that we know where they are at all times and everybody knows where they are. So show me that you can do that. And then we'll graduate on to the next lesson. Cool. Well, this is how we analyze the types of cars that are coming in. This is how we analyze the problems. But once you can work through those step-by-step competencies and they start gaining those and you have a checklist in place to actually rate and skill and provide feedback on those specific areas, those small chunks, then you know when they are actually graduating and you are seeing growth in their position. And if they're still struggling in some of those fundamental areas, then they can't really move on to some of these next technical areas. Otherwise, these fundamental things that you rely on as a business owner, as a company, or throughout your customer's journey to experience, then you know that those are going to get fumbled. So you have to go back and start focusing on those fundamental tasks before you can play that full song like you're talking about.
Yeah. Oh, and the fact that you have competency map is pretty amazing. I've not walked into a company yet that has that set up. So good on you.
I'd love to show you actually and get some feedback on it.
Oh,
because
I'd love to see what you've built out. That's so exciting. We definitely do competency matrix and maps for our clients, and then tie skill development to that. But it's not super hard to do, but it just takes time and intention to go, what do we actually want from somebody and what do they have to do? So it's not just like, here's what we need them to know, but it's what do we need them to do? So there's always a skill and a knowledge and generally an attitude or a mindset component to it. But Oh yeah, we could just have a whole conversation on that alone. I could nerd out there for sure.
There's a
But
couple of
mhm,
components, and I just want to make a bit of a something that I've certainly noticed, and is incredibly important, because we had over the years really developed all of these positions. And anytime we
mhm.
implement a new position into the organizational structure, that gets looked at. How is this position going to fit into the organizational structure? What is this role going to look like?
Yeah.
How is it going to feed all of the other roles? How is it going to best support our customers? And then how are we going to train them? So we build those competency models, but building the playbooks and building the competency models is one thing. That is easy, especially now with AI. And like
Mhm.
all of these models that we were building were all done prior to ChatGPT being a thing,
Which
right?
is
But
good because when people rely on it so heavily, it's honestly not that great. This is
it's
a
not. It
lot.
can tend to overcomplicate
Yeah,
things, and I think you lose some of
this is
the
the mark.
nuance there, perhaps, and some people would argue with that. But the challenge is not building the playbook in the first place. It's how to deploy the training and getting the commitment and the buy-in and providing that ongoing feedback and having a feedback loop to make sure that those expectations are in fact being met. And
Mhm.
that is the challenge. And your job as a business owner, or as the leader in the organization, or as a project manager, or whoever it is that you are supervising and training, it is your responsibility to oversee that they are getting that they are committing to actually seeing these competency models being met.
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, there's a few things. Whenever you create a training, whether it be, hey, today we're going to practice this thing and I'm going to show you and then you're going to show me and then, on we go. I mean, that could be training. It doesn't need to be a workshop. A lot of it happens on the job. Hey, we're going to use this checklist and we're going to use this procedural guide and I'm going to show you how we want it done here. That is it. And then, hey, I need you to show me that you can do these 5 things before you're allowed to do it yourself. There's a lot of um, tell, show, and then show me back. That's a very classic training model. Now, the thing that most people skip is how are you going to measure it? So when you're a professional learning person, measurement is actually where you start. There's a model, nobody's going to care. Well, maybe somebody will. It's called Kirkpatrick, and it's a model of assessing people. So the first is level 1 is like, do they like the training? So you could go around after and be like, hey, who liked the training? And everyone's like, yeah, yeah. Or like, no, it sucked. So that's level 1. The second level is knowledge. So, like, you could do a quiz. You could be like, all right, guys, we're going to do a quiz on changing your oil. That might be in an apprenticeship program where there's an in class component.
Mhm.
So, that's knowledge. Do they know it? Or you could quiz them and be like, all right, tell me the 4 tools you need for this thing. And they're going to list them all. And you're going to be like, great, awesome. And then level 3 is behavior. So, that's the thing you're looking for on the job. Can they actually do it? Can they demonstrate the skill, or can they demonstrate the competency? And you can formalize that. You probably, most companies have some sort of a form mechanism. So it might be like how, upload a safety form or put in your vacation request or whatever. You can literally build forms that a supervisor or an observer would be able to check, yep, I saw them do this, and this. And that could get submitted and go to their learning record. So you could keep track of the fact that, like, oh, this month we're going to learn these 4 skills. And a supervisor could actually check and observe and report back and be like, yeah, they can do it. So that's a level 3. But most people don't build that in.
Why is that?
Well, I think it's just the next step, right? Like, nobody wants to be tested or trained. And I think a lot of times they think, that's not for our industry.
You know,
But I
I
argue it is,
I
and even more
100%.
so. And if it's built into a digital or automated learning management system, you can just get a trigger like, okay, it's day, I don't know, we're in whatever learning month, and be intentional about it. And today I'm going to observe like 5 guys on the job doing a certain thing and check that they actually did it. We built it in, actually, one of our clients was train technicians. So they manage a light rail transit line in Toronto and they have to maintain it. So obviously, like, big responsibility, right? So we built in a lot of observer checklists, observer forms. So it's like not just you did the training, but now you have to be observed to show and prove that you can do it. Yeah. So just build it in. It's just another system, and there's nothing wrong with doing it and expecting it. And then you've got a record to show that they can do that procedure.
Real quick before we get back to the show, if you have heard anything on this podcast that has resonated with you, or if it's helped you in any way, appreciate more than anything in the world if you could go hit that subscribe button or leave us a review. It helps us tremendously. I want to go back to being able to continue to serve and do more and more and help out and get bigger and bigger guests on, better and better. The only way that I can do that is with your help. I'm so honored to be here. Let's get back to the show. Appreciate you. Have a wonderful day. One of the most simple things, I mean, you talk about training systems and, learning management systems and implementing that. Something simple like Google Drive can be a perfectly powerful tool for so many people and so many companies that we're talking about. And I think it's I forget who mentioned it, but I think it was Alex Hormozy. I went down and had done a couple of days training with him at acquisition.com. And his is like a rite of passage as an entrepreneur to have a Google Sheet empire and start building everything. And I think this is, where a lot of people start building some of these processes, which is what we did early on. And what we had was each employee had their file. We called it their employee toolbox. So if you're a site super, a project manager, you have your own file, and it in there has all of your SOPs, your operating procedures, all of your competency models. You had a file for communicating. This is where we stored all of your benefits, all of your information, any sort of, if we did employee reviews, the what those employee reviews look like. And that was where we were able to store those items. But out of that list, we also had a checklist on their employee form that showed where they were within the learning platform. And so it was basically you have 16, 17 competency models or whatever position you were in, that if those boxes were checked off and signed off on by your manager, then it showed that you had in fact graduated from being competent in that specific role or competent in that specific task. And that might be so many different things, whether it's going to be doing a rough-in checklist, whether it's going to be setting up on the first day, whether it's going to be hosting a toolbox meeting for all of your subcontractors on site, whatever that is. If it was repeatable, then it became a process that could be measured and checked off on to make sure that you are graduating. And people, I find, love that.
Yeah, they do. They want structure. Don't forget, we're all raised in a society where there's a lot of boundaries and rules and structure, and most people crave that. If it's too ambiguous, they get lost and they're like, what? It feels a little disarming. So I think it's good. Honestly, Brandon, I'd love to see behind the scenes of what you're doing, because it sounds like you've got some really great, simple hacks that, just are making a lot of sense. It's exciting to hear about what you're doing. Honestly, it's really good.
I'd love to share it with you.
Yeah.
How do we get people excited about the trades? Like, I'm really on this mission to make trades cool again. I'm speaking at schools all over the place. If you were in my shoes and you were getting in front of high school students, I'm going back to the same high school that I graduated with. When I was in high school, what was pretty unique was there was there was the mechanics class, it was construction class, it was woodworking class, it was drafting class, it was electronics. Like, we had shop teachers at our schools. And we had at one point 6 different shop teachers that you could go into and choose something that you wanted to learn. Is now we're down to like 1.5 shop teachers.
Yeah.
And it's all kind of combined, and nobody's doing a great job of it, and people just aren't interested. But we need to really open that back up again.
I know, we do. And that'll come from, honestly, government funding. Like, we're not going to be able to get more funding into those classes and programs until the government start putting that money back into the education system. I think, there's so many people and so many families that are taking their kids out of regular school because they just are not happy with the options available to kids. That's not always possible. But I don't know. Let's think of this as sales. Like, if you're trying to sell to somebody and you know they have a problem, but they're not aware of it yet, or you know something that'd be great for them, but they're not aware of it yet, you have to ask a lot of questions, right? So I'd almost suggest like turning the tables. All right, kids, what do you want? How do you want to spend your day? Like, what does a dream job look like for you? And did you know that trades can offer some of that stuff? You get to be outside, you get to work with your hands, you get to like have cool teamwork. I don't know. It's hard to sugarcoat the challenging sides of the trades too. Like, it's going to be cold, it's going to be hot, it's going to be dirty, like whatever the things are. But yeah, I don't know. I'd be doing asking some questions. Some of the stuff that I am part of, like with especially some of the unions, they do a pretty good job of getting to high schools. They are bringing VR. We've been part of developing some cool VR. Some companies I know in Western Canada, they're bringing VR to kids, in the skilled trade shows and things at high schools. It's just getting them to see like, oh man, I could like drive a crane. I could like operate this heavy equipment. I think it's just getting them exposed to it and seeing that there are some really cool opportunities. And they can make good money and they can get paid while they're learning. There's just, we gotta sell it.
There's a big opportunity for high school students in our area specifically to join trades in their grade 11 and 12 years in their senior years of high school, where they're able to go and work with a company and make money for half of their semester, and then they go back to school for the other half of the semester, which is awesome. But we have brought on a number of those students that we've worked with over the years, which is great. It's an awesome opportunity for them. But one of the challenges is they're often in a place where they need to drive, they need to get to site, they need to move around, and they don't have a car yet. They don't have a driver's license. So they require, having to jump on a bus or needing their parents to pick them up and drive them to work, which is often a barrier on its own. And then it becomes a burden almost on the employer to have to go and pick them up and drive them around and train them. And as the employer, you're doing them a service, but they are not helping you out. And if you have real paying customers, real homeowners, and you're spending time on their job site, or things are taking longer and you're relying on them to show up and work because somebody is actually paying the money, then that looks bad. On the company from the customer's eye. So that has certainly been a challenge. And we even had a scenario where we had a young gentleman. He came and worked with us for a few weeks, and his mom would drive him to the job site. That was part of the deal. But he showed up, he was supposed to show up on site. He was going to arrive at 8:00. That was the time that his mom had said that he was going to be able to be there. And he didn't show up. It was 8:30. He wasn't there. 9:00 wasn't there. We're waiting because we're planning on pouring concrete. We wanted to share this with him, what we were doing. And got a call around 10:30 from his mom and said, you know what, he didn't want to come to work today. So we got to the end of the road and he said he didn't want to come. So I just packed him up and turned him around because I don't think that he should have to come if he doesn't want to go. I'm like, what kind of lesson are we teaching our future workforce here? You don't feel like going to work, so don't worry, you don't have to go to work.
Absolutely aggravating. That's a bigger society issue. Yeah. And I mean, you're right. There are some programs that are great, and there are definitely some barriers still that have to get sorted out and figured out. Like we'd have to get creative there. And I don't think there'd be one size fits all, but I mean, how many people are sitting around that would be able to volunteer to drive kids? Like, I don't know. There's got to be some way. Like, we used to be more creative with our village and getting people in the community to help. We're losing that sense of, leaning on each other. I'm not exactly sure the answer, but something to come back to.
And I think that's important. Maybe we'll pick that up next time. But I do find that there's a lot of people that are very much focused out of necessity on their own situation. And if you're a teacher, I don't know many teachers that haven't gone into their own pocket to
Oh,
pay
they're
for
all doing that.
supplies to like, but
Yeah.
teachers don't generally make a lot of money. So
No.
that becomes a struggle. So for them to go that extra mile and get pushed to do more and help more when they really need to focus on their family as well, that becomes a
I know.
challenge.
Tough.
And
Yeah.
people are really focused on what is best for them. And they've put up we've gone really hard on
Oh, the
boundaries
boundaries.
recently. And
Yeah.
I get that, but I'm like, there is something to be said for going out of your way to helping people and going and picking up somebody from the
Yeah.
airport when you don't feel like it, because
We've
it's a
gotten
nice thing to
too
do.
selfish in some cases with our boundaries. And, I'm like, sometimes you just volunteer because it's the right thing to do. Um, but that's, but, but society isn't all geared towards that. It's pretty much geared to whatever's best for me, myself, and I. I hope that we, as a society, can come back more to community and helping each other out. And I think we're probably going to have to do that more as time goes on, and humans are getting displaced. Hopefully it doesn't get too bad, but I think we'll need to rely more on our communities and on our in-person networks, to share and be successful. So I don't know. We
100%.
won't solve all the problems today, but this sure has been a good chat about a lot of things.
Manya, where can people find you if they do want to connect and reach out?
Sure. I mean, that'd be great. If anybody's interested in learning more about what we do, please do check out our website, boostld.com, or find me on Instagram. I'm the only Manja Horner on Instagram. And
Oh,
that's the one benefit of having a unique name.
100%. There's a lot of Brandon Smiths out there. I'll tell you that. There was actually two
So
in
funny.
my high school, and anytime Brandon Smith got called down to the office, both of us would show up.
Yeah, that's so funny. Yeah, so feel free to follow me on Instagram if you're interested. I'm definitely putting out more content as my book is coming out in the spring. And I hope that's an interesting read for people. It sure was educational for me to do the research on how did we get here and what's the future going to look like, and then, all the bits in between of what we're trying to do. So
Love it. Well, we'll put all
yeah,
those links in the show notes. And for people, what is the title of your book going to be so people can look for it?
it's called Passing the Torch in the Trades.
Passing the Torch in the Trades. Love it. Congratulations on
Thank you.
that. Looking forward to reading that when it comes out. Make sure you notify us. We'll get a copy.
Oh, absolutely. Everyone's getting copies.
Everybody's getting copies. And for all the listeners out there that are still with us, thank you so much for being here. Until next time, stay blessed, rock and roll, peace. Have a wonderful day.